Portion 1 of The Grey Woman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jane Greensmith of JaneGS.com. The Grey Woman by Elizabeth Cleghorn Gaskell. Portion 1. There is a mill by the Neckarside to which many people resort for coffee, according to the fashion which is almost national in Germany. There is nothing particularly attractive in the situation of this mill. It is on the Mannheim, the flat and unromantic, side of Heidelberg. The river turns the mill wheel with a plenteous gushing sound. The outbuildings and the dwelling house of the miller form a well-kept dusty quadrangle. Again, further from the river, there is a garden full of willows and arbours and flower beds not well kept, but very profuse in flowers and luxuriant creepers, knotting and looping the arbours together. In each of these arbours is a stationary table of white painted wood, and light movable chairs of the same colour and material. I went to drink coffee there with some friends in 1840. The stately old miller came out to greet us, as some of the party were known to him of old. He was of a grand build of a man, and his loud musical voice, with its tone, friendly and familiar, his rolling laugh of welcome, went well with the keen bright eye, the fine cloth of his coat, and the general look of substance about the place. Poultry of all kinds abounded in the mill yard, where there were ample means of livelihood for them strewed on the ground; but not content with this, the miller took out handfuls of corn from the sacks, and threw liberally to the cocks and hens that ran almost under his feet in their eagerness. And all the time he was doing this, as it were habitually, he was talking to us, and ever and anon calling to his daughter and the serving maids to bid them hasten the coffee we had ordered. He followed us to an arbour, and saw us served to his satisfaction with the best of everything we could ask for, and then left us to go round to the different arbours, and see that each party was properly attended to. And as he went, this great, prosperous, happy-looking man whistled softly one of the most plaintive airs I ever heard. His family have held this mill ever since the old Palatinate days, or rather, I should say, have possessed the ground ever since then, for 2 successive mills of theirs have been burnt down by the French. If you want to see Scherer in a passion, just talk to him of the possibility of a French invasion. At this moment, still whistling that mournful air, we saw the miller going down the steps that led from the somewhat raised garden into the mill yard, and so I seemed to have lost my chance of putting him in a passion. We had nearly finished our coffee, and our kuchen, and our cinnamon cake, when heavy splashes fell on our thick, leafy covering. Quicker and quicker they came, coming through the tender leaves as if they were tearing them asunder. All the people in the garden were hurrying under shelter, or seeking for their carriages standing outside. Up the steps the miller came hastening with a crimson umbrella, fit to cover every one left in the garden, and followed by his daughter and 1 or 2 maidens, each bearing an umbrella. "Come into the house, come in, I say. It is a summer storm, and will flood the place for an hour or 2, till the river carries it away. Here, here!" And we followed him back into his own house. We went into the kitchen first. Such an array of bright copper and tin vessels I never saw, and all the wooden things were as thoroughly scoured. The red tile floor was spotless when we went in, but in 2 minutes it was all over slop and dirt with the tread of many feet, for the kitchen was filled, and still the worthy miller kept bringing in more people under his great crimson umbrella. He even called the dogs in, and made them lie down under the tables. His daughter said something to him in German, and he shook his head merrily at her. Everybody laughed. "What did she say?" I asked. "She told him to bring the ducks in next. But indeed, if more people come, we shall be suffocated. What with the thundery weather, and the stove, and all these steaming clothes, I really think we must ask leave to pass on. Perhaps we might go in and see Frau Scherer." My friend asked the daughter of the house for permission to go into an inner chamber and see her mother. It was granted, and we went into a sort of saloon overlooking the Neckar, very small, very bright, and very close. The floor was slippery with polish, long narrow pieces of looking glass against the walls reflected the perpetual motion of the river opposite. A white porcelain stove with some old fashioned ornaments of brass about it, a sofa covered with Utrecht velvet, a table before it, and a piece of worsted worked carpet under it, a vase of artificial flowers, and, lastly, an alcove with a bed in it, on which lay the paralysed wife of the good miller, knitting busily, formed the furniture. I spoke as if this was all that was to be seen in the room, But, sitting quietly, while my friend kept up a brisk conversation in a language which I but half understood, my eye was caught by a picture in a dark corner of the room, and I got up to examine it more nearly. It was that of a young girl of extreme beauty, evidently of middle rank. There was a sensitive refinement in her face, as if she almost shrank from the gaze which, of necessity, the painter must have fixed upon her. It was not over well painted, but I felt that it must have been a good likeness, from the strong impress of peculiar character which I have tried to describe. From the dress, I should guess it to have been painted in the latter half of the last century, and I afterwards heard that I was right. There was a little pause in the conversation. "Will you ask Frau Scherer who this is?" My friend repeated my question, and received a long reply in German. Then she turned round and translated it to me. "It is the likeness of a great aunt of her husband's." My friend was standing by me, and looking at the picture with sympathetic curiosity. "See, here is the name on the open page of this Bible, Anna Scherer, 1778. Frau Scherer says there is a tradition in the family that this pretty girl with her complexion of lilies and roses lost her colour so entirely through fright that she was known by the name of the Grey Woman. She speaks as if this Anna Scherer lived in some state of lifelong terror, but she does not know details, refers me to her husband for them. She thinks he has some papers which were written by the original of that picture, for her daughter, who died in this very house not long after our friend there was married. We can ask Herr Scherer for the whole story if you like." "Oh yes, pray do," said I. And as our host came in at this moment to ask how we were faring, and to tell us that he had sent to Heidelberg for carriages to convey us home, seeing no chance of the heavy rain abating, my friend, after thanking him, passed on to my request. "Ah," said he, his face changing, "the Aunt Anna had a sad history. It was all owing to one of those hellish Frenchmen, and her daughter suffered for it, the cousin Ursula, as we all called her when I was a child. To be sure, the good cousin Ursula was his child as well. The sins of the fathers are visited on their children. The lady would like to know all about it, would she? Well, there are papers, a kind of apology the Aunt Anna wrote for putting an end to her daughter's engagement, or rather, facts which she revealed, that prevented cousin Ursula from marrying the man she loved, and so she would never have any other good fellow, else I have heard say my father would have been thankful to have made her his wife. All this time he was rummaging in the drawer of an old fashioned bureau, and now he turned round with a bundle of yellow manuscript in his hand, which he gave to my friend, saying, take it home, and if you care to make out our crabbed German writing, you may keep it as long as you like, and read it at your leisure. Only I must have it back again when you have done with it, that's all." And so we became possessed of the manuscript of the following letter, which it was our employment, during many a long evening that ensuing winter, to translate, and in some parts to abbreviate. The letter began with some reference to the pain which she had already inflicted upon her daughter by some unexplained opposition to a project of marriage; but I doubt if, without the clue with which the good miller had furnished us, we could have made out even this much from the passionate broken sentences that made us fancy that some scene between the mother and daughter, and possibly a third person, had occurred just before the mother had begun to write. "Thou dost not love thy child, mother. Thou dost not care if her heart is broken. Ah, God! And those words of my beloved Ursula ring in my ears as if the sound of them would fill them when I lay a dying, and her poor tear stained face comes between me and everything else. Child, hearts do not break. Life is very tough as well as very terrible, but I will not decide for thee. I will tell thee all, and thou shalt bear the burden of choice. I may be wrong. I have little wit left, and never had much, I think. But an instinct serves me in place of judgment, and that instinct tells me that thou and thy Henry must never be married. Yet I may be in error. I would fain make my child happy. Lay this paper before the good priest Schriesheim. If, after reading it, thou hast doubts which make thee uncertain, only I will tell thee all now, on condition that no spoken word ever passes between us on the subject. It would kill me to be questioned. I should have to see all present again. My father held, as thou knowest, the mill on the Neckar, where thy new found uncle Scherer now lives. Thou rememberest the surprise with which we were received there last vintage twelvemonth; how thy uncle disbelieved me when I said I was his